to the What the Falk Sunderland preview show. The Michael Beale era begins this Saturday as we welcome Coventry City for a Christmas clash between the two sides that really pretend to hate each other but don't really. I haven't completed my Christmas shopping yet, and I really should be out buying things, but as always, I am sitting here with my mic ready to preview Saturday's game with the excellent Ross from Sky Blues Extra. Ross, Merry Christmas. How are you, mate? You okay?
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you, mate. I'm okay. How's things for you? Looking forward to the Beale regime, as I've seen from Sunderland all over Twitter. It's looks like it's a bit of mixed opinions. I actually spoke to my mate who I mentioned to you, obviously privately, who's a Sunderland fan, and he's actually quite willing to give him a go. And we operate a bit different to Rangers. He's come in as a head coach, not a manager. He was like, so that might suit him more. So he said, I'm not ecstatic by it. He said, but I'm gonna just get behind him and see what he can do with our young team.
I've got everything crossed and not much hopeful, mate. But I mean, I've been proven wrong before, and I'll be proven wrong again. In terms of Coventry, we'll start straight from the top. I think a
Yeah, go
difficult
on.
season in sort of many ways for you because obviously you lost a lot of players, which are going to come on to you, but just one defeat, I think, in the last seven. So we'll look at the last match first. Bit of a bad tempered one by the end of it, but a draw with Leeds at Elland Road. How's the performance? How's the game?
Yeah, I went, mate. It was really good away day actually. Obviously, Leeds historic ground. They got the Billy Bremer statue outside. They're a big club, aren't they? Got a lot of history, etc. So it was a good away day. It's one sort of everyone looking forward to right before sort of Christmas. We were on a better run, and touching on that sort of, we've only actually, I think a Cov fan said a stat. We've only from last Christmas to this Christmas, sorry, we've lost three home games in a year. We lost to, I can't remember who the first one was. I think it was Norwich last year. That was the start of December. Then we lost to Stoke around April time, and then we obviously lost home to West Brom. But we've only lost, I think it's in 26 games, we've lost three home games. So our home form's actually pretty solid as well as a team. To be fair, although we probably don't win as many as we should, we don't lose ultimately, which is a good stat to have. But yeah, it was a good game, mate. They're a good team. Obviously, they got Premier League players. They got Patrick Bamford. I mean, I spoke to couple of their fans after the game as we were leaving the ground. And they said he's on about 75 grand, 70 grand a week, and he's just sat on the bench, mate. Like he come on for about 10 minutes. I thought, God, Haji Wright's probably our most expensive player. I think he's on about 25 grand. So you're looking at about 50 grand difference just for a benched player. Like
Hmm.
they moaned about how we played, but ultimately I don't think they realised that we were so good last year because we were ultimately a transition team. Like Kieran McKenna, the Ipswich manager, said, he said, if you want to look at transition and a transition team, the best team in the league are Cov. We are the best team at transition football when it comes to box, using the width, transitioning on teams. We probably, when we are on it, are the best team in the league at doing that, and we can kill anyone by doing it. So I don't know what Leeds fans were expecting. Yes, we're trying to play a lot more this year, which we are, but ultimately we don't have 50 million pound players or 40 million pound players just sat on the bench or starting. Yes, we've spent a bit of money for us, but we're not anywhere near their level in terms of depth and money, etc. They've got, because they've only just come down from the Premier League, which they were in for like 2 or 3 years. So I don't know what they were expecting from us, but we went there with a game plan, which was obvious, was to try and see the game out as long as possible and then nick it if we could. And obviously we went a goal down, and it was, funnily enough, we were asking for the changes. And then as we were about to make the changes, we were about to pull off Jay Da Silva, who was playing left wing in that game. And I can't remember really, I think it might have been not Jamie Allen, it was someone else who he was bringing off. He scored the equaliser just as we were about to make those subs. So they're a bit of a, I don't know, mate. You can tell they're a very entitled fan base afterwards, just by how they acted on Twitter. Like two of their players, Gnonto and Somerville, started absolutely crying and refused to shake our players' hands, along with a couple of others. I mean, I watched Joe Rondon do it for them. Their centre back, Simms, went to shake his hand and he just walked straight past him and refused to. So they acted like babies, mate, and they got themselves into that predicament. So yeah, in terms of the game, it was, we went there and did what we ultimately needed to do, and we took 2 points off Southampton and Leeds, and chances wise we did have good chances and we probably could have nicked both games. Going into this, we are in a good vein of form. The only team we've actually lost to was Ipswich, and we could have actually got a point at Ipswich if we didn't miss a penalty. Probably if you'd have spoke to me 6 weeks, 7 weeks ago, we're in a much better state, and we look like we're a team that are starting to gel, mate.
Looking back at the summer, I think I kind of half mentioned it, and
Yeah.
you have improved, but look, you're losing Gyökeres, who I think we've all seen has gone on to do what he's doing at the minute, and then
What a
Gustavo
player.
Hamer, yeah, outstanding. Then Gustavo Hamer's gone to Sheffield United, which might be a bit different, but still a big player. Both,
Yeah,
both
big player.
massive in that run to that playoff final last year. The start of the season, I think it was just two of the opening nine games you won, which obviously you've come off
Yeah.
the back of a defeat on penalties in the playoff final. Not great. How much did the loss of those two affect the beginning of the season?
I'll be honest, mate, massively. You can't lose a player of Gyökeres'
No.
standard and ability and Gustavo Hamer's ability. I mean, you probably watched the Leicester game, the first game of the season when we played them. We should have actually beat them, and Hamer played in that game. And for 65 minutes, Shrewsbury Hall and Didi and Winks didn't really do that much. The minute he went off injured, different game, completely different game. And that tells you the standard of level that you have when you have someone of Hamer's ability and then you drop. And it's no disrespect to players like Eccles and Allen who play for us. They're decent players, but they're not that good, if that makes sense. They're not that cutting edge level. And I'll be honest, if there's the one area that we have to sign a player that Coventry fans have been screaming for since the summer before it's shut, that we need a central midfielder that can play next to Ben Sheaf. Somebody of not the same as Hamer, just someone who has that incisive pass in them. You know, someone that's just is very good at what they do, like a John Swift type player or a Matt
Hmm.
Grimes type player in this division. Someone who is just good at what they do. I think we'll start to really see a much better team because we've now got your O'Hares and your Palmers, etc., back in who can play in those little pockets. We've got Sakamoto and Hadji who can play on the wings. You've got Simms who ultimately, yeah, he hasn't set the world alight, but you can see his games now starting to improve. And I'll be honest, it's the one area that people slagged him off for at other clubs. We've not seen other clubs said, well, he'll score a couple of goals, but he hasn't even done that for us. I think he scored two against QPR and that was it. But his actual hold-up play is now starting to become a lot better. He's starting to do that side of the game a little bit more, which for us is a positive because everyone else said that side of his game was basically naff. And at the start, it was non-existent. And he is a frustrating player still at times. He will stand still, but he's starting to learn just little adjustments to this division and how we want him to play, which as a 22-year-old is a massive plus for us. And hopefully the more we go into depth in the season, the more he's going to play. And ultimately, he's not had a big run of games in the team. He's sort of played two, maximum three, and then been shipped out and been on the bench for a while. Yeah, it's losing players of that caliber pretty much it'd be like you losing Jack Clark and Patrick Roberts. You know,
Yeah.
you can't lose two players of that ability. Like Jack Clark is an unbelievable player at this level. His ability on the ball is frightening. He's the one player that I don't want us to play against on Saturday because I know he can just cause anyone damage in this division on his day. And it was the same with Gyökeres and Hamer. You knew if you caught them on a bad day, they could turn it up against you. So losing players like that, mate, is always going to be difficult. But we have reinvested and we've reinvested in a team rather than individuals, and that was the big adjustment. We all trust Mark Robins. He's a goat for us, mate. There's no dispute, and I think any club can say what they want about us as a football club, but they'd probably rip our hands off to have had a manager as long as we have. I mean, he's been with us 7 going on 8 years now. The stuff he's done, he basically pretty much saved us, mate. We wouldn't have been a football club if it weren't for the man ultimately, the way we were going. So even when it doesn't go right now, I think we'll go through another bad patch, if that makes sense. But I
Yeah.
think the fans will stick by it more because they've seen the good side of it. Whereas before we hadn't seen the good side. It was just negative, negative. It's a difficult transition, mate, I'll be honest. And it's taken a lot of time. And like Robin says, we don't ever sign the finished article. We always sign players. Simms is a classic example. Simms is bought for 5 million, but he's not the finished article. He's someone that over years is going to gradually improve. Gyökeres and Hamer are a classic example. They weren't that good when we first signed them. We made them into a good player, if that makes sense. So we've got to trust and stick by these lads. And in 2-3 years, whenever it may be that they blossom, they could probably be at that same level that we were with the previous team that just got to the playoff final last year. So yeah, it's interesting times, mate. But that transition is always hard, as you touched upon.
I wanted to dig into Sims a bit because I was looking at, like, when you look at a striker, the first thing you look at is goals and assists. First thing
Yeah,
you look at.
ultimately.
Yeah, like, and I looked at Sims when he was at Sunderland, 7 in 17. And it's funny you mentioned before, like, if you'd, I thought people seen him as a target man and he was nothing but a finisher and a good one at that, to be fair, at this level. But
Yeah,
then you look at what he's got at Coventry and 2 and 22. But I don't like to just look at stats if I can avoid it. So you go in the forums and you look and you search for Ellis Simms and you say, right, what are people saying? And outside of one or two little gripes, Coventry fans do seem happy with him. Is that because he's gone from being someone who you might have expected to have the similar level of form as what you had with Sunderland, because you always think, we'll just continue on it where it is. But you can see a progression in him. He's got progressively better as opposed to progressively worse.
Yeah, I'll be honest, mate. Every club has fickle fans, but Coventry, we are very, very fickle. And the one thing that you cannot accept, especially with what we've built as a club, is players who don't run or look like they just aren't really interested, or if they're not fit. And ultimately, if you're not delivering even if you're unfit and not playing well, but you still put the ball in the net, like you said, it shuts people up because you're scoring the goals. But if you're not doing either, that's when people start to go, oh, you're a donkey, you're this, you're that. And he has had periods where he's done some awful first touches and he looks like, I call him Krusty the Clown feet at times. He does look like Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons. Like he'll do a touch and it'll just balloon off his foot. But then he's also now started to show signs that he's a big boy. Do you know what I mean? He's about 6'3". He's massive. So if he uses his body, and he's probably still growing, don't forget, he's still only 22. He's not 24, 25. He's still growing. So if he develops and becomes a lot bigger and knows how to use his body, he'll be a very good asset of a player to have at this level. And ultimately, we've just got to accept that we're going to get stick for him. He's going to have stinker games and he's not going to play well. But we've got to trust with Robins. Yes, he's not going to be like Gyökeres. He's a totally different player. But Robins got that version of Gyökeres out of him that no one else could. We've got to trust that we're going to get the Simms version out of Simms that Robins will bring out of him. And ultimately, that is what I am basically allowing myself to happen. So although he frustrates me, you do fucking hell Simms at times, he's one of them players, but you have to suck it up. And you're quite similar to us, I think, in that sense, that you have quite a young model, especially under Mowbray. He's very similar to Robins in that sense, but obviously he went for extremely young players like 18, 19, whereas we go for 22, 23-year-olds that we try and then develop into sort of finished articles. So it's a similar model. So I think you can understand that sometimes you have them players that you can see a player in there. And I'm not saying Ellis Simms is going to be a world beater, but you can see that he's going to develop into probably a decent championship level striker at some point. He said himself in an interview on BBC Coventry and Warwickshire, we played Southampton actually, he played all right. He said, I'm a confidence player, I'll be honest. He said, if I'm confident, I'll do well. He said, if I've got no confidence, I won't play well. He admitted that himself after the game. So ultimately, I'm sat there thinking, well, if you've got no confidence and we're booing you, you're going to play terrible then, aren't you? If we're moaning about it, whereas if we get behind you, you're going to get confidence eventually because you're going to think, well, these people are backing me every week. Once something just drops me and happens, the world's going to just come at his feet.
I don't wish him luck on Saturday, but I do wish him luck in general. I like Simsy, mate, but with that sort of upturn in form you've had, the league's still tightish. There's starting to be more of a gap than there maybe was 2 months ago, but you're 9 points off the playoffs. That's in the championship, that's a week of games sometimes. You did it last year in a more difficult position. How confident are Coventry fans that you can repeat that last year, or is there not as much expectation because of the players that you lost? You're happy to see improvement. It doesn't need to be the playoffs.
You know it as well as we do. Every club, again, has clueless fans and they have level-headed fans. And the level-headed fans will tell you, I said to you at the start of the season, and I've said it all along, I thought we'd get mid-table anyway this year. I said this year, I don't care about the playoffs. If we don't get it, it is what it is. We've got a brand new team, let them settle. And then next year we'll identify specific targets and then we'll kick on from next year. And the pressure will be playoffs next season. We must get into the top end of division. Whereas this year, it's not. It's just about solidating. So to finish 10th, 11th, it really wouldn't faze me, if I'm being totally honest. Although you don't want to admit that, but we know where we are as a football club and we're completely restarting with a whole new team. So ultimately, if we get in the playoffs, we'll have done very, very well, because to have a whole new pretty much starting 11, bar a couple of players in your team to then get into the playoffs of the championship, which with all the teams that are in it and the players they've got would be some achievement. So I'm not expecting us, but it would be nice if we could put up a little challenge, even if we don't get in, but we're staying in around there and we give a good account of ourselves and see where we end up. And like I said, we're not we're not actually too far off. I think we just need a couple of positions. The must for us is a proper number 8. We must sign a proper number 8. And I'll be honest, we have got money, and we've got quite a bit of money left over anyway in terms of revenue and stuff that we've got. But from the playoffs last year, Gyökeres going, Hamer going, it looks, if Gyökeres keeps up his current vein of form, that he could get a move in January because he's got a €100 million release clause at Sporting. Now, for people who are your fans who might not be aware, if he goes for that release clause, I think we can get anywhere between 11 to 12 million euros, which is about £10 million for that. So if he goes, we get an extra cash boost from him going that comes directly to us, which gives us more money to play with then in January. So if we find a target and we go for him, we're going to have the funds there. So going back to your point, it all depends on circumstances of A, the targets that we want become available, and B, we think it's the right person to go for, and then a circumstance like Gyökeres going from Sporting to somewhere else and us getting that funds allows us even more flexibility. As long as we keep ourselves in and around the position we're in now and then add to what we've got, who knows, mate? We could under Robbins, you never know what he can do with this team, mate. And obviously he's got the backing of the crowd and the away fans and stuff like that. So just doing what we've doing, the support we've got, it will most definitely be an interesting run.
Last time we were on, obviously we spoke about Tony Mowbray because he'd been in charge of views. He was doing a great job for us, and look, he did do a good job. He's recently departed, yes, but he's going to be remembered well. Now there's a new man at the helm, so Mowbray's got no reason to be in this conversation, I suppose, but here we are. I think, and I don't speak for, I'll never ever speak for every Sunderland fan. No one ever can. But I would say there's been more than 50% not exactly enamoured with the appointment of Michael Beale, which hopefully we're all wrong with. But from the outside perspective looking in, Michael Beale comes in, and I think you can sometimes be a bit more objective when it's not your own club. What were your thoughts on Sunderland going for someone like him as opposed to, the other people we were linked to, like the European names and whatnot?
Yeah, well, you were linked. It looked like you were. A lot of people saying you were going to get that Will Still, weren't you, from the French league? He was a name linked for a while. Beale's, it's a weird one because at QPR he did very well at the start, and his last game for QPR was actually against Cov. Gyökeres scored 2. He should have had a hat trick in that game, and we beat them 2. And it was just before the World Cup break, around November time, 2022, and then he left just after that. Yeah, it was an interesting time at QPR, and it would have been interesting to see what he did. But then I didn't really follow him that much, if I'll be honest. I didn't know until all of his Sunderland stuff how hated he actually was by Rangers. I couldn't actually believe it. I thought he left and got sacked, but it was like, you didn't do great, but thanks for everything. Because he was Gerrard's assistant, wasn't he, as well, previously as well. So I didn't think it was like that. And then I looked on Twitter, and honestly, I saw threads, the lies of Michael Beale, and a whole list of threads of stuff. And I just thought, whoa, where did this come from? And I thought, yeah, they're not going to be happy with this. But I thought you would go for a Will Still kind of appointment. Beale's an interesting one. It'll be interesting. I think, to be honest, I think your fans have just got to suck it up now and support him, because I think if you don't get behind him, he's going to be in a world of trouble, because ultimately Sunderland get 40,000 home fans every game. If half of them aren't really bothered about him, or half of them don't want him to be there, he's basically not going to have a good time, because if you don't have the backing of the crowd at a club like that, you got no hope. Like I hate to bring it up, but Eddie Howe is an example at Newcastle. The reason he's doing so well is their team isn't even that amazing on perspective. I said it last year. It's built off pure momentum of the crowd have bought into what he's doing and believe in what he's doing and support him. Like, that is what it literally is built off, and everyone knows. Up your neck of the woods, up sort of North Geordies, Mackhams, if you get behind your team, you're laughing as a manager, because the minute you have that support, you're going to have a lot of support behind you, because football is life or death up that neck of the woods. If you support a team, you are literally Sunderland or Newcastle, or if you're a bit further over, you're Middlesbrough. You are literally one of those 3 teams, and that is all you live and breathe up that side of the country. If you lose Clark, as an example, because I think people will come in for him in January, I think that'll be a difficult one for you guys. If he could stay, that would be a real big benefit for you. I think Patrick Roberts will be another one I know he signed a new contract with you guys, I think, didn't he? But I still think clubs, if they give a big enough bid, Sunderland aren't going to go, oh no, sorry. If someone comes in with a ludicrous offer for him and says, oh, we'll give you 8 million as an example, it's going to be hard to say, oh no, we're not getting rid of him. The club are going to look at it financially and think, well, actually, he probably isn't worth that. We're probably actually making quite a bit of profit off him. So it depends really on what Beale does. If Beale comes in and say loses those two players and doesn't recruit players that Sunderland necessarily think are that standard, or they're thinking, why are we going down this route? It could start to get a bit toxic, because then the fans are going to think, well, you've just sold two of our best players and are now recruiting this style. We don't like this. Or he could keep them, bring in a few players, and you could start to be a bit like what QPR was and get a bit of momentum. And before you know it, everyone could be fully on board with him, and he could have a completely different time to what he did at Rangers. So any new manager or head coach coming in, mate, it's always going to be a guessing game, isn't it? You have to wait out and see what you're going to do. Ultimately, it's going to be the right decision that the club made or another wrong decision that the club made. But the most important thing Sunderland fans, from my perspective, have got to do is get behind him. Because if you don't, he's going to be in a world of trouble from the minute he starts, basically. So it'll be interesting to see how you guys take to him this Saturday, because we're going to come and be loud. I know people have been rinsing us for only selling 1,000 and so on. And that was something I wanted to touch upon while I was on here. And I didn't really buy into all this stuff on Twitter that I've been seeing. But people have got to understand, although it's not a 7-hour journey or whatever Middlesbrough saying it was to Swansea, it's still a good 3.5 or so hours, 2 days before Christmas. We'll probably at least minimum take 15 to 1,800, I think, by the time it goes to general sales. So, however many we have, we're going to make noise and we're going to be loud. So ultimately, your crowd have got to stick basically behind your team, or else it could be a long afternoon for you. And that's not even just down to the new manager or new players. It could just be atmosphere plays a massive part of football, unfortunately. And I think a lot of people forget that. You can have all the tactics and everything you do, but if your crowd aren't behind you and that energy isn't in the ground, the energy is the most important thing. And if you can feed off your fans, you've got 40,000 of you that will be in there that can make it a difficult afternoon for us, but vice versa. If they're not, it could be a difficult afternoon for you guys. So I think ultimately it comes down to Sunderland and whether they take to Beale or not, and whether they suck it up and just go, look, let's get behind him, or whether they really just aren't a fan of him.
Beale or no Beale.
Beale or no Beale, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Two last ones for you. Obviously, the predictions is going to be the final, as it always is, but you've seen the reaction to Beale. But you're right in some senses that Sunderland fans, when everything's against you, you feel things are going the right way, you've got no other option than to get behind it and push the lads on. And I think Sunderland are quite good at doing that.
Yeah.
You also don't really know what you're going to get from a Michael Beale Sunderland. We don't even know yet. So does this make Coventry's game harder, or do you think it's more likely to be able to be used to your advantage, the appointment of Beale, and it's been his first game?
It makes it hard, but I think Robbins will probably set up on a basis of what he knows you do, because it's going to be such a short turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
And he might even base off what he did at QPR, because it probably will be a similar style to what he's done at Rangers and QPR. So he'll probably go off that mod, but you don't know what he's going to do. And ultimately, Robbins might change things up in that game, because he might think, well, actually, they've not got much time to prepare. So if we do this, it's going to completely catch them off guard. So if we change it up and then switch in game, we could use that, because he's not had long with his players. So he doesn't know what he's going to get from them in certain situations or scenarios. So I think you can use it to your advantage for sure, but we can also use it to our advantage as well in certain aspects. So it's going to be, put it this way, it's going to be a good footballing game, because both teams, especially us this year with the players we've got, we like to get it down and play. And I know that you guys do as well. So from an actual footballing aspect of it, it's going to be a very good game. And like you said, ultimately made the best team win. It will be another game of chess, basically, on Saturday against you guys, but in a different way, in terms of none of us really have any big standout players like your Leeds, your Southamptons and these teams, but we do have very good players like Haji Wright, Van Ewak, Jack Clark, Patrick Roberts, Sakamoto. These type of players are still very good players at this level. So it'll be interesting to see when we come to Saturday how we get on. But I definitely think it'll be an encounter that both teams will try and have a little bit of something different against each other and see what they can do.
I don't know why I do predictions, because I never get them right. I've got a couple right. And we're talking about, I said before, I don't know what the hell to expect from Saturday. I genuinely don't have a clue. So I'm just going to take a shot in the dark here, and I'm going to say uh 2-1 Sunderland, but I'm just saying that for the sake of just that's the first goal that came in my head. It's not with any heart or with any head that you might have a bit more of an idea, but I don't know
Well,
what
I
to
actually think
expect.
I actually think it's going to be a goal fest. I think it's going to be 3-2 to us because I predicted 3-all against Leeds,
As long
and
as
there
it's not
wasn't that many goals.
5-4, mate. Jesus, not 5-4 again. I'm not having
And we
that.
have had a goal fest with you guys before, so it wouldn't actually surprise me. So, Christmas is that funny time of year. You always get that
Mm.
game, don't you? Where you'll have a game, like you have 1-0, 2-1, then suddenly you'll both just score an absolute shed load of goals in a game, and it'll be 4-4 or 3-all or something. So, I'm going to go 3-2 Cov. On Saturday, and I think Simms might score as well. I'm going to stick my positive Cov hat on, just like we'll try and do with your son. And I think 3-2 to us. But one thing I will say about us that's happened recently, we've had two new centre halves, Liam Kitchen and Bobby Thomas, who we got from Barnsley, and the goalie as well, Brad Collins. We've only, I think in the last 7 games, we've only conceded 2 clear-cut chances in both of those games from the statistics, from the stats. So we don't actually give up a lot of like you might have
Hmm.
snapshots and stuff, but clear-cut chances. We've only conceded 2, and I think one of them was against Stoke when we drew 0-0 at home, and the other one was against Leeds. Maybe against Ipswich, there might have been a couple. I think it might, if you don't include the Ipswich game, I think bar that game, the other 7 that we've played, or 5, 6 or 7, whatever it may be, I think we've only conceded about 2 clear-cut chances. So we don't actually give up a lot of chances, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go for a 3-2, but it'll be an interesting game either way, mate.
We make loads of chances. We just can't seem to score them, especially on the road. So
We
God knows what's
We
going to happen.
believe me, mate. We struggle with the same. We played Birmingham at home, and it honestly should have been about 6 at a minimum. It should have been at least 6. We had so many chances to put that game to bed. It was a good job at Oernu where the net was that game,
Mm.
or we'd have drew 0-0 with them, and they were absolutely pony. They were the worst team I've seen up at the CBS all season. They were horrific. They were awful. I've never seen gaps in between a midfield and defence as much as I have done against them. It was absolutely insane because I turned around to someone who was next to me and said, if this was Ipswich or Leeds, this would have been 5 or 6 easily. They'd have absolutely put these to the sword. So we both struggle with that aspect of the game of killing teams by scoring a couple of goals against them. So if we were both ruthless, it could be we could be having completely different conversations. But ultimately, at the minute, I don't think either of us are consistent at being ruthless enough. So someone's got to take their chance, I think, Saturday, or it's going to be a draw. So it'll be interesting to see, mate. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, actually. Yeah, why not? Ross, Merry Christmas, but not for Saturday. Hope you have an awful Saturday, as you would expect. And I'm
Uh,
sure you return that favour back.
Oh, mate, massively. I hope all Sunderland fans have a great Christmas and New Year, but I hope we absolutely stuff you on Saturday and we leave the stadium light with another victory, or at least not a defeat like the previous 2 times that I've been there before. But yeah, thank you for that, mate. I also just want to obviously give out a quick shout out to obviously my podcast that I'm part of,
Of
part of
course.
Sky Blues Extra. So obviously, if you guys could sort of give a little shout out and a retweet. Obviously, I know you might not ever be interested in in Coventry stuff related, bar when you play us, but obviously Sky Blues Extra, we're a podcast that do all sort of Coventry City stuff related, and obviously we do review and preview sort of other teams. There will be probably a Sunderland preview coming out at some point this week. So if your fans want to sort of go and have a little listen, then obviously my profile you'll put out from Twitter, and it's in my
Hmm.
link in my bio on my Twitter. I've got at Sky Blues Extra. So if you click on that, it will take you straight direct to our page, and you can have a little listen if you want to. But yeah, I wish you obviously guys as much as as much as I can. I know we've got sort of this rivalry going on, but I wish you obviously, because this would be the last time that we actually play you, because we played you twice in 2023,
Yeah,
so we won't play you now until next season. So obviously we'll be interested to see where we both end up this year, and wish you sort of all the best for the rest of the season, and see what you do. But yeah, Merry Christmas to you all as well, mate.
you as well, chap. Thanks for popping on.
No problem. Take care.